All right. Happy Friday. Welcome to the stream. We are live. It's Friday, so Dfi-nancial Friday. Here we are. My name is Alfred from Diversifi Capital. Of course, we got Raymond joining us as well on our show today. Raymond, what's going on? It's another Friday. How are
Good,
you?
good. Happy as always Friday.
Yeah,
Looking forward to the weekend. How about you?
I know, right? We got actually some team events going on next week. I'm super looking forward to that and
Wow.
actually getting to seeing the team in person, which will be amazing, right? But again, we are live across our platforms. Got another show for you guys today, talking a little bit about how do we protect ourselves in terms of financial information being out there. I mean, more than ever, right? Like we are sharing credentials, sharing our information, posting our information into workbooks. And so it is a common concern that, even our clients will talk about as we're working with them remotely, as we have for a long time with our clients, actually. But like, how do we make sure that you're doing what you can, or at least understanding things that are available for you to limit some of that liability, right? And so we'll get into that in the later part of the show. But again, we always talk about the market, and we'll get into that in just 1 second. Of course, as we get into the show, I always start with things like, right? Talking about how this is not your personal financial advice. It's not specific to you, right? It's more for general financial planning education. But there is a place for that, right? If you're looking for personalized advice, looking for some information about our financial bootcamp, head to diversificapital.com, get started page, watch a little bit on a video about how we are trying to change the way that financial advice is provided to the new generation. Okay. We're also, of course, live here every Friday, unless, of course, there's some holiday and we're off, right? But if you're looking to get notifications as we go live, make sure you subscribe either to our Facebook or YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is a great place for all things that we've done, organized by our team, so that you guys can see, right, the different topics, different series that we've done. And we're looking forward to bringing more to you and how you can, again, listen more to these topics. Okay. So I always like to, kind of preface this and say, the market itself, right, is going to be something that we try to talk about with you guys, hopefully in a simple, easy to understand manner, what's going on. I mean, it is interesting. I'm going to show the stats at the bottom here so Raymond can talk to us a little bit about it, right? So those are some of the numbers. We did add, I realize, someone commented to me, like, is it possible that you put like the year to date number, like how the markets are doing year to date next to how it did this week? So that's what you'll see right at the bottom right now in the brackets, right? The 13% for S&P is the year to date number. But again, Raymond, just read off some of the numbers. What are you seeing? What did you, like notice go on in the markets this week?
Yeah, definitely seen the Nasdaq beat out the S&P 500 and Dow Jones, which has been a while since we last seen that.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing even S&P hit all-time highs today. So year to date, as you can see below, it's at 13%. So they're going to be the best out of the year to date compared to Dow Jones and the Nasdaq. But you can see the Nasdaq's getting closer and closer back to Dow Jones, about 4% away. But I find there's a lot of confusion, right, in terms of still the headlines being inflation, right? The Fed's thinking of not doing anything in terms of raising interest rates, where we are seeing a recovering economy. It's not always a bad thing to increase interest rate. It means that we are recovering in that aspect. So I think investors are slowly starting to overlook some inflation, but we're seeing a lot of back and forth between large cap growth with NASDAQ and value stocks, but kind of seeing that inch closer together recently.
I mean, while we're on the topic of inflation, I think, to your point, the idea about is inflation going to be something that is going to be here for a while. And I think for those that are watching, why does it matter when we talk about inflation, right? And
Yeah.
it's about this idea where, my dollar today, right, what I can buy with it, right, we call it purchasing power, is eroding. It's worth less and less. And even if I stay invested, right, all of that, that's one way, right, to battle it. But then you have to be in the right investment like that doesn't get affected by inflation, as we've talked about in many of our shows in the last month or so. Something like growth stocks are affected a little bit more, as you can see NASDAQ at 8.5% this year compared to 12 and 13%, right? There's concerns that inflation will affect those stocks more than others, but it is a way to keep up. I mean, again, there are friends, a lot of our friends personally, that maybe they're not as comfortable with investing and they sit on money in their right like savings account, and though that's a massive inflation risk, right? If you know and actually, right, there's a term out there, Ray, I don't remember if we talked about it on the show, but right, have you heard of the term shrinkflation? Right?
No, that
I
sounds new.
didn't
Yeah.
either. I did not either. Hearing what like shrinkflation was. So I read this article. I was like, all right, like what is it that people do in times of inflation? And I'm saying people as in like those that make product, right? Like, is it Kleenex boxes? Is it cat food and all these things? Because cost of those things are all rising right now. Whether that's a
Mm-hmm.
long-term sustainable rise, that's being debated. That's what Raymond is talking about in terms of like, is that a debated topic? Like, is that a long-term inflation issue? But what's going on right now is the idea that shrinkflation, whatever you're buying has shrunk, right? So like cat food, whatever the same price of your monthly cat food delivery, let's say, instead of 6 ounces per can or whatever it is, it's 5.2 ounces per can. Without you even knowing, you just paid the same price for 0.8 ounces less. That's shrinkflation, right? We joke around all the time, Ray. We talk about $5 footlongs at Subway. Those things aren't $5 anymore. That's inflation, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I guess they could have made it a $5 footlong, but then when you get it, it was actually only 3/4 of a foot long. That's shrinkflation, right? And so this is happening right now. There's a measure of that sometimes in when we talk about inflation and talk about them measuring it. They actually will weigh the goods and see what went down or not. But it made it harder, right? It's been harder to do that in times of COVID and going to the stores. But I think it was just an interesting term, like that. This is real. It's happening, right? It's happening in front of our eyes right now. Not just in gas prices, but everyday things that we buy, right? You just don't know.
Shopping.
I don't think any
Yeah.
one of us will know, Raymond, if there was like 10% less Kleenexes in the box. Like, how the heck are we going to know that? But we probably
True.
paid the same price, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is still, I think, the most common topic. But you know what? What are we not talking about? We're not talking about, right, like where COVID cases are. We're not necessarily talking about vaccine, like where is that? Although you are seeing vaccination rates slow down a little bit, it's not maybe headed up to the higher numbers that we wanted to, but like it's slowed down quite a bit. Internationally, right, you're still seeing struggles of certain areas getting vaccines. For example, right, like a place like Taiwan completely shut down their borders, and they were able to stay fairly right COVID like case free for quite a while, but they haven't
Mm-hmm.
had the same right vaccination rates. And it just takes one person, right, and they're still, once they start opening up, they have more travel, right, they're running into issues. So it'll still be interesting, although not top of mind for everybody, is like how
Yeah.
COVID is going to be impacting some of these things, right? So um but yeah, I think that was definitely something I learned last week. That term shrinkflation, I thought was really interesting,
Good
and
one.
wanted to share with you guys. All right, so
Yeah.
um, but yes, we're going to jump into talking about our financial planning topic, and this is the idea about, right, like how do I protect my financial information? How do I protect my accounts, right? All of those things. Now, I mean, I posted in a group chat, right, at work the other day where we were talking about a password leak, right? And we're talking about a
Yeah.
password leak that had what, it was like something like 1 billion passwords, or I don't remember what it was. But it was one of the
Larger than
biggest
that.
passwords,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's mind blowing to me to think that like this doesn't happen more often. Okay, not the fact that it happens. Okay, because I honestly make the assumption that like with the amount of tracking apps and things like that, data leaks,
Mm-hmm.
someone out there just hasn't picked on me yet in terms of right like
Or
identity theft.
Maybe they have. We just don't know, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and just to kind of clarify, it was actually 8.4 billion.
8.4 billion
4 billion
passwords.
leaks, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was just like last week. So, chances are if you have a password, it was probably in there, right? And so,
Yeah.
and so how do we manage that, right? Like, how do we talk about that? How do we, think about doing certain things, right, that can help us be protected? Before we get to
Mhm.
that, like, what are some of the things that happen, even, right, that people are worried about? So, I'll talk about the first one, which is like, you see the worry about someone stealing your identity and opening a new credit card, right? Drawing out money. I think that's one big concern, right?
Yeah.
Um, password leaks. We just talked about that one. What's one
Mhm.
that, Raymond, that people don't talk about, right? When it comes to like things they do annually, right? And but we see often. What is another one that you can think of?
Yeah, another one would be relating to your taxes that you file each year. There's a possibility in terms of your identity being stolen in that aspect when someone pretends to be you. They file your taxes, whether it's fake, whether it's real, and they actually get your return or your refund that
Mm-hmm.
should have been yours, right? And before this, if you ever were into that situation where someone did steal your identity from filing taxes, there's a PIN that the IRS is also changing moving forward, allowing more protection around a specific PIN that you can create so that only you have this. And when you file it, it requires this PIN to continue and ensuring that it's really you and not someone else that's filing on your behalf.
Yeah, I mean, hold up, right? Let's take a step back. You're
Yeah.
telling me, right, that someone can file my taxes, right? Like, you're like, wait,
Hmm.
why would they file my taxes, right? They're filing your taxes just simply to use your identity, right?
Yeah.
And then putting in information, just modifying some of the numbers. I mean, think about it. When you file your taxes, right, audience, right, like, you just get the refund, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like they actually go and check, right? You're not getting an audit the moment you file. Like, that's how US taxes work, right? Like, you're getting an audit at the fastest probably 2 years later.
Yeah.
So when you I as someone, looking for cracks in the system and all of that, they're saying, well, I can just submit a tax return with numbers that are relevant, like reasonable, that shows a refund, put in a
Hmm.
bank account number, and then all of a sudden, right, that refund comes to me, and boom, account is closed. I'm good. I run away with the money, and that is what is going on. It's happened to a lot of our clients that we
Hmm.
know. They go and submit their return, Raymond, and then what do they say? Oh my gosh, like, it got rejected, right? Like, they're like,
It's already been submitted,
it's already been
which is
submitted.
the
Like,
worst thing
wait, what? Like who did my work for me? No, unfortunately, it's not like in a good news situation that someone did it for you. Your
Mhm.
identity was stolen, right? And they filed, and they pretended to be you. Now, in the past, Raymond, you were talking about this
Mhm.
IRS pin. So let's now start getting into, right? Like we've identified three things that we want to talk about, right? Like, it's the, like, thinking about someone applying new credit under your name, talking
Mhm.
about, right, passwords being stolen. Well, how do we think about that? And of course, the tax returns. How do we protect yourself there? So we'll cover those three things because, right, like, we're not cybersecurity experts, right? None of that. There's
Mhm.
certainly many things that beyond that you can do, but these are three common things that we run across with our clients, right? So
Mhm.
in the past, what happened, Raymond? Like, if you try to go apply, was there actually anything you can do prior to 2021 with with the IRS and trying to get a pin beforehand?
No, unfortunately, there's no way to get it before unless you're actually a victim of identity fraud or somebody had filed taxes on your behalf. So they are trying to change that now,
Mm-hmm.
make it more accessible to anyone who wants to opt into receiving a PIN. And to be honest, and that sounds like it should have been there to begin with, and not taking this long to allow people to opt into it. But definitely something people should consider, right?
Yeah. And so I'll have our team include a link to this in our description and notes. But again, the IRS started this year, allowed you to, instead of after the fact, like, instead of having your information stole once and then you get the pin, they're saying, you know what, you can get the pin now, right? Thankfully that is the case, right?
Yeah.
right? But essentially, you get the PIN, and so then what happens? Well, that PIN is something that you need to submit and file with your tax return before they will accept your return. So without the PIN, you can't do it. I mean, I feel like it sounds simple enough, right? And we'll see how well it works. It just got launched this year that you can actually apply for it through the direct IRS website. So absolutely, point number one, right? Get an identity protection PIN from the IRS to protect your tax returns. Who should you do it for? I mean, honestly, I have a daughter. She's 3 years old. Do I think I need to protect her identity? Yeah, actually, right? You have situations where, right, people will file tax returns on kids' tax returns, right? And you may never know it because you don't need to file one, but that's certainly happening too, which we'll talk about in 1 second about like how to protect like credit on that as well. But again, from a tax return perspective, right, you can absolutely go help yourself by signing up for an identity protection PIN.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's talk about the credit card, the getting credit, like applying for credit. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit, Raymond, about, right, like what is, for example, like credit monitoring, right? You hear that a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like especially,
Yeah.
what was it, 2016? I don't know when the massive, right, Equifax credit leak was, right?
Yeah.
Right. What is like credit monitoring versus credit freeze? Okay. And how has that improved in the last, I don't know, 5 years since that credit, right, leak to protect yourself?
Yeah, I mean, ever since that leak with Equifax, which everyone houses their social security number and personal information there, you would expect not one of those type of bureaus to have any leaks, but it did happen. And the difference, I mean, starting off with credit monitoring, think of it as really like a fraud alert, right? It allows you to either pay for a service. Sometimes employers allow for this type of service through their benefits, or you can pay it through one of the three major credit bureaus like TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax, where they would monitor any types of transactions or anything that they feel would be fraud and would notify you so you're aware of it and take action upon it, right? So credit monitoring does help in a way that you're keeping on top of it. You know, you're keeping an eye on anything that looks suspicious or anything that might be fraud, but it doesn't necessarily protect you as compared to what credit freezing is. So when you freeze your credits, what this allows you to do is basically when you try to go open an account or when you try to open a credit card or bank account, usually they're going to request for your social security number. They need to run a credit on you, making sure everything checks out. But with that credit freeze, they actually are not going to be able to create that account until you remove that freeze. Now, given what happened with Equifax, a few years back, they've made it a lot easier now for you to freeze your credit score and unfreeze it. It was more difficult before, where you had to mail your copy of your social security card, a copy of your driver license, letter, just to freeze it. You also have to pay a fee. But given what had happened, all of them are falling with each other in terms of now all you have to do is sign in to one of their online access. It's really a click of a button now to really just freeze and unfreeze. So while it does help in terms of not being any accounts being able to open at a bank account, even if you were to walk into your bank account yourself and try to open an account, you would not be able to, even though you are yourself, right? But it goes to show that it does prevent accounts, unauthorized accounts, to be created, and provides more protection, in which you can always turn off if you ever are trying to open a credit card or getting a mortgage, for example, where you can unfreeze it for that time being and then turn it back on. So
Yep.
really think of credit monitoring as a way to keep track of any suspicious activity, any fraud that might be going on, where you'll be notified, and there are subscriptions around that. But whereas credit freeze takes actually one step further and actually protecting your accounts in the case someone tries to walk into a bank, calls in, or tries to open an account underneath your information.
And I mean, right, like you're talking about, instead of just an alarm system that tells you someone is at the door and inside your house, right, with video cameras, you're saying they can't actually
Mm-hmm.
get in, right, with a credit freeze. And I
Yeah,
personally, right, like credit freeze a lot, right? um
definitely.
I think the difficulties that come with credit freeze are going to be, well, I can't unlock it. Well, I guess that's the purpose of it, right? Like you need to have
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
pins, the passwords, and all of that to be able to do that. But if you can keep track of all of those things, then you know what, unlocking your credit, you know, people worry about the hassle. What if I go buy a car? I mean, hopefully you're not buying a car, right, every other week, okay? And you can actually know when that is going to happen. But even if that was the case, even if you're sitting at the dealership ready to buy the car and they say, we need to run your credit, you say, hey, you know what? Which one are you running it against? Is it TransUnion? Is it Equifax? Is it Experian? You know, hop on your phone nowadays, right? And log in and hit unlock, and boom, they're able to run your credit right after. It's that simple, right? Like, to me, that's one of the easiest things that you can do, Raymond. And I think feel a little bit more security that like someone can't actually even, again, I made the assumption right at the beginning of the show. I was like, hey, you know what? I already know if someone already has all my information. The question is, are they going to use it or not, right? And so they just want to pick on the easy targets. If they go in, they make a shot at it, and it's locked, they're not going to try again. Hopefully, that's the case, right? And so,
Yeah.
I definitely think that is the right way to go. If I was right, like in your guys' shoes, to do the credit freeze, right? And you can actually do the credit freeze for kids as well, right? Like if they have the social security number, right? All of that. Again, if they're not applying for any credit, I think that's a perfect thing to do to try to, right, limit the exposure, right, to just unauthorized lines of credit being run.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the process would be to visit those websites, the three that we mentioned. There's actually a fourth one that not many people have heard about, but it's called Innovis, which also works the same way as a credit bureau. But if you are interested in freezing your credits, definitely visit each of their websites, create a login for it, and then be able to freeze your credit that way. So it should be fairly simple to complete, and definitely worth protecting your identity in case any accounts get opened.
And now we're at the final one, right? How do we manage, right, like logins and passwords? And again, we're not cybersecurity experts, but we certainly talk about this with a lot of clients, right? I mean, it all ties in together. Like if I'm talking about having a credit freeze, then I need to know how to be able, right, to log in back to the credit fees without having to reset my password and do all of that. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Hard to do. So, if I think about it, having a good system to create secure passwords is going to be part of it. Now, I mean, we can go on and on about different password managers, right? Every platform has one, right? Like if you think about Google Chrome as a website browser, well, Chrome has one. Apple has their own. Okay, everyone has their own, and so I think it boils down to probably two most popular ones, right, to use. And I'm going to talk about what the benefits of those are, right? And I think there are, of course, negatives to it, and I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. But Raymond, what is one of the two most popular ones that are out there, right, in terms of password managers?
Yeah, one of them is going to be LastPass that we actually use personally as well. So this allows you to basically add it onto your browser and help create or generate secure passwords, so unique passwords, right? Things that include random numbers, random characters, where it's not easy to guess, and that's going to be really important when trying to set up passwords for your multiple websites. So you don't want to use redundant or repetitive passwords.
Mm-hmm.
You want to use the ones that are going to be unique. Try to max out on a number of characters that the password allows you to utilize to take full advantage of that, right? But as we have so many websites, since everything is based online now, we are creating usernames and passwords everywhere. So in order for us to keep track of this, a password manager does help in this aspect where you can house everything in this one area, but you want to make sure too that LastPass is going to be secure. Right? You want to have things set up like multi-factor identification, where it could be either through your phone, like through a Google Authenticator, maybe through text message through your phone. Definitely goes a long way in that second step before you even go into one of these password managers.
And the other one is 1Password, right? I think is another very, very popular one. And I feel like between the two, it covers most platforms across multiple devices, right? And it creates this kind of, and again, this certainly to me beats like having a spreadsheet somewhere, because I think still having a spreadsheet somewhere, if you're on your phone, you need to log into the spreadsheet, right? Be able to get that. Like, I think one of these two methods is the best balance, right? Or having a password manager in general is the best balance between, not having, password 1234, right? And then just on a different account, it's password 12345, right? Like, really, I think sounds like a joke, but I mean, how many people actually do that? A lot of people, right, actually still do that with their passwords, okay? And the idea is that it's just there's too many logins, I don't remember, right? I had to reset it all. But I mean, I think it's some time involvement to actually use one of these password managers to all of a sudden be able to replace all your passwords. And then to your point, to log in to the password manager, you better make sure it's very secure, right? And these platforms have very secure ways to be able to get in, right? Hardware keys, even something you need to carry physically, plug into your computer, tap on the back of your phone before you can even log in, right? I mean, those are different methods that maybe, I don't even know if 1% of the population actually does that, right? But like, if your business revolves around it, right? Certain things, you certainly take these steps or at least thinking about it, right? Mm-hmm. What I think is also interesting that most people don't talk about is like, I mean, this ties back into like estate planning, right? We've talked about like what happens if you pass away. A couple of shows ago, we were talking about, right? Like estate planning is not just for those that have a ton of money, like it could be for everyone. One of the things that, isn't mentioned is like, well, like what if one person in the family manages all the accounts, right? Which tends to happen quite a bit, right? And then all of a sudden, if they're not here anymore, who knows all the passwords? Like, how do I get in, right? And so one cool feature in these password managers is the ability that you can set. If I don't log into my password manager for, I don't know, set a time frame, whatever you want that to be, right? It would actually send, right, your designated person an email and saying, hey, maybe something would have happened. I can't, to this person, they haven't logged in X amount of time. Here is your access code, right, to the remaining database. And of course, you're not going to send that to like, anybody. I mean, that probably email should go to like your spouse, right? Your wife, your husband, whoever it is. But I think that becomes incredibly helpful when you're talking about if something were to happen, how do you make life easy, right? Like, how do you make life easy on everybody, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely something that, you guys should think about. But again, to summarize, right, if we're thinking of, common issues that people run across with identity theft, we're talking about, right, passwords being stolen. So again, some password manager to cope with that. If you have a situation with credit, right, people have your identity, people are trying to get new lines of credit freeze, I think, is the way to help with that problem. And then finally, right, probably the less known one, right, is tax returns, right? So you can hopefully prevent that by now signing up, right, new to 2021, which we'll post a link in our summary here and in our description. You can actually sign up for an identity protection PIN voluntarily, other than, and again, as Raymond said, not like before where you had to be a victim of identity theft before, right? You can get that PIN, so you can actually do it beforehand now. So hopefully if you guys take those 3 steps, right, it'll just help you feel a little bit better, a little bit more secure. And to me, things that you can do within, right, at least starting to get that set up within 15, 20, 30 minutes. And I think that would help you out quite a bit. All right. Did I miss anything, Raymond? Did we cover all of the 3 topics?
Yeah, I think covered a lot today. Hopefully people take our advice and don't fall victim to it, but better protect yourself when you can.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you to our live audience, right? Those joining us on our stream. Remember that, again, if you drop us a like, drop us a comment, hit subscribe, that certainly helps our channel, but also gives us an ability to see where the feedback is, or let us know what you guys want to hear about, right? And hopefully we can continue to bring more of these topics to you guys, as it's, again, for Raymond and I, very enjoyable to come online, come live, and just talk about topics that, I don't think is being talked about enough in terms of personal finances. Okay. So thanks again. We're from Diversifi Capital, and we'll see you next Friday at 3. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.